Hello, friends.
The Bears are who we thought they were.
The Bears. The Bears.
I am the great Cornholio.
We'll see what happens.
Playoffs?
Seton Hall. Sean McDonough, Jay Billis. Goats.
Can you play a song? Something cool. Put my mic on!
I'm calling both games.
Goes down the field for Smith.
Oh, he got it.
See how we're getting ready for Cincinnati.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Mike's Madness, and in today's video we're going to be getting to some thoughts I have about the NBA and an idea that I came up with. And this is an idea that a couple other people probably have come up with the events today. But if you have a Twitter account and you're keeping up with the NBA, news and everything, you probably saw the 10 tweets or 5 tweets or whatever it was that Adrian Wojnarowski came out with today. The guy that always drops the the Woj bombs, as they call it. It was a lot of tweets that he came out with a lot of information about the new COVID guidelines and restrictions, or whatever you want to call them, right? Restrictions, guidelines, whatever, rules, laws, whatever you want to call them. The NBA came out with a bunch of them today because a lot of players are from various teams, not just one team, not just 2 teams, but from various different teams are starting to, the COVID cases are starting to go up, and it kind of gave me a flashback to baseball last season, or in 2020 in the summer. I remember that when the Marlins had like that catastrophe, the Cardinals had their issues. Like I feel like every team, or not every team, but most teams at one point it was like their turn to have their COVID issue, right? And we didn't really see that too much with the NFL. I mean, we did see some teams have issues, like the Patriots did. The Chiefs, I think, had some issues. I mean, every team had a few issues, but nothing monumental where you had to postpone games a lot. And that did happen a few times in the NFL. With the Patriots had a pretty big issue. The Ravens had a pretty big issue, and I think the Browns or Titans had a big issue as well. So, but that is what, 4 or 5 teams out of 32. And in the NBA, or in the NFL, they still got the season done on time, right? The regular season. The NBA is already having issues, and we're not even a month into the season yet. So, and if I'm gonna flash up the pictures here of the Woj tweets here. So, here you go. So there are a bunch of new protocol changes, as he says. Players cannot interact with non-team guests at the road hotels, right? So yeah, you got they cannot have guests in the rooms on the way, on road trips. When teams are at home, players and team staff must remain at the residence except to attend team activities and games, practices, whatever. You have to pretty much stay at home. Staff can't leave the hotel on road trips. Except for team emergencies or activities. What was that? I saw something about approved restaurants. And this is just, as you see on this other tweet. I mean, these were all tweets that happened within I would say 20 minutes. Like, man, my man's was going at it on the Twitter. Like, his fingers must have been broken. Like he must have had some real issue. Like, man, I mean, I don't know how you tweet all this stuff within 20 minutes, but he was going at it, man. He must have been going to work on his keyboard. But yeah, crazy. So, you got masks got to be worn now on the bench at all times, and meetings in the locker room here says limited to 10 minutes. If other meetings have to be on the court, that allows 6 feet of distancing. You have to go COVID testing twice a week if you want to, visit a home team staff member or whatever. And here you go. You got to wear a mask on the sideline, or on the bench rather. The chairs have to be arranged 6 feet apart. Like, you got to wear a mask at all times on the bench and everything. And just a lot of new rules and restrictions coming down because of because of all these new positive tests that are, or positive cases that are popping up in the NBA. And I thought about this a little bit, and I had an idea, and this kind of is a bit of a throwback back to when they went with the Orlando bubble to finish the season last year. And I kind of had an idea similar to this, but this year, today, I came up with this other idea, where I think it would be better if they went to that same kind of bubble idea, but not have all teams in one bubble in Orlando like they did to finish the season last year. Instead, I think they should come up with a quote-unquote local bubble. I mean, you can't get too local because teams are spread out across the country, but I think you can have little, like, bubbles. I got one for New York with teams in the Northeast, teams in the South. They would go through the same Orlando bubble venues that they used last year to finish the season. One in the Central, they would use arenas in Chicago. Another bubble in Texas, you would use venues in Houston and Dallas. And then the Pacific, you'd have venues in LA and Anaheim, kind of thing. So here's my idea. Again, this is not anything, I didn't copy anybody. And if somebody else has the same idea, I apologize. I'm not trying to copy you or anything. Just something that I came up with in probably the last half hour. So I had an idea about the Northeast bubble, quote unquote. Now again, this is just for fun. This is just an idea that I had that I just threw together. This is nothing like, this isn't happening yet. I don't know if it will happen or if we're on the verge of this kind of thing happening. I don't know. I don't have all the inside sources like Woj does, but I think you can put together 6 teams for a Northeast bubble: the Sixers, Knicks, Nets, Celtics, Cavs, and Wizards. And I think that you could go to the New York. You could have venue. You could use Madison Square Garden. You could use the Barclays Center, and those are 2 arenas that are already used by NBA teams. The Knicks and Nets are using them, and the only quote unquote issue you would run into is with the NHL season starting. You might run into some schedule conflicts there. But another venue you could use would be the Nassau Coliseum. That one is in New York, pretty close to Barclays and Madison Square Garden. Another one you could use. I mean, there are plenty of basketball stadiums in New York. You could go up if you really wanted to. You go up to Buffalo and what's that, KeyBank Arena where the Sabres play. You could use that if you really needed to. The Carrier Dome you could use. Well, I'm trying to. There's one other where St. John's plays. You could play there. I forget what that arena is called. I mean, there are plenty of options in New York, and I think that's a big enough state where there are plenty of options to find arenas. And I think this is something that is very doable for the NBA. Not to have one huge bubble for the whole league, but to have little bubbles. And it kind of is the same idea that the NHL used to do their playoffs, their postseason, where they had a bubble for each region in the playoffs. It's that same kind of concept. We got a southeastern bubble would look like teams like the Raptors, and the reason I put the Raptors in the southeastern bubble and not the northeastern bubble is because the Raptors have already started the season down in Tampa. Otherwise, I probably would have put them in the northeastern bubble and moved Cleveland or Washington into another one. But I put the Toronto Raptors in the southeastern bubble in my idea because they are already playing in Tampa. They're playing their home games in Tampa, and so I put them in the southeastern bubble with teams like Atlanta, Orlando, New Orleans. I put in the southeastern bubble as well because I was going through my idea and I didn't really see any western bubbles that made sense to put them in. And you'll see it in the next slide, in the next picture, a couple other teams from the Western Conference that are in these bubbles with other Eastern teams because they are kind of. I never really understood why these teams are in the Western Conference when they are really, I mean, you take a look at teams like Memphis, they're more of an Eastern location than the Bucks, right? so that just kind of things that I kind of went for and put into my own idea here. But as you see there, you see the teams that I put in my bubble and in the Southeastern bubble, and the team behind my face cam there is the Orlando Magic. And again, this is the bubble that I would say you use the same venues that the NBA did for the Orlando bubble to finish the postseason last year. And if for whatever reason that wouldn't work, you could use the arena that the Tampa Bay Lightning use. You could use the Tampa Bay Rays stadium. Because they're not playing baseball right now, but spring training will be getting started in a few months. But this is January. Spring training doesn't get started to March, I believe. So, that's an idea. Yeah, I think you could just use that Orlando bubble concept that they used to finish last year, and this would work way better because it's only 6 teams, not like 20 teams or whatever it was to finish the season last year. So yeah, that is another bubble. And then the Central, this is, as I said, a few other teams from the Western Conference that are in these bubbles with these Eastern teams. The Central bubble would look like the Pacers, Timberwolves, Bucks, Grizzlies, Pistons, and Bulls. And again, I'm stressing you this. This is nothing that is going to happen. This is nothing that is going to be put in place. This is just an idea that I came up with for fun and games. It's just an idea that I came up with because I think that the only way that the NBA season is going to get done on time and in a timely manner is if they do something similar to this. Because and it doesn't make any sense that you got, like last night, for example, you had the Pacers were playing the Kings. That's a pretty, that is a big travel distance. And you also had the Timberwolves were playing. Or not the Timberwolves, the Trailblazers were playing. Who were the Trailblazers playing last night? I think they were playing the Rockets, was it? That is a pretty big distance as well. So, I think that if the NBA wants to get their season done without having a lot of positive cases, is you've got to cut down you've got to cut down teams like Boston coming across the country to play LA. It's just that big, that huge travel. That long travel distance is just not going to work. I think the reason that the NFL was able to do things like that and have the Chargers come across the country and play, or sorry, the Raiders come across the country and play the Falcons. The reason that the NFL was able to do that is because the NFL's rosters, like a team's roster, is like 100 guys, right? 100 players. The NBA, you've got less than 30 guys on your roster. So I think if the NBA has a decision to make. The NBA can either continue with their plan that they have now and allow for bigger rosters up to about, I would say, 40 or 50 guys, right? Which would be a huge change. Like we have never seen anything like that in the NBA before. Or they can go to something similar to the idea that I'm kind of proposing, I guess. I'm not really proposing it to them, but I'm just kind of proposing it to the 5 people that watch this YouTube channel, and that they would have to cut down on teams playing other teams across the country and just play teams that are closest to them, and kind of in a bubble format, not go back home kind of thing. So you might be wondering what venues would I have here. You got the United Center where the Bulls play and the Blackhawks play as well from the NHL. There could be some issues with the NHL starting back up. You've got Allstate Arena, which is right next to Chicago O'Hare Airport. And then you've got another arena, Wintrust Arena. I believe the DePaul Demons play there from the NCAA. So there would be a few kind of scheduling conflicts that, not really conflicts, but there's something that you'd have to work with other teams and other organizations from other leagues. You couldn't just go in and say, this is what we're doing. So just another idea there. Teams that are closer to each other than having, again, as I mentioned, the Lakers come across the country and play the Celtics. Just doesn't make any sense. I've got a southwestern kind of bubble with teams like the Jazz, the Mavericks, Spurs, Nuggets, Thunder, and Rockets, and the majority of these teams are in Texas, right? You got the Mavericks, the Spurs, the Rockets, and those 3 teams are in Texas. and the Thunder are not far away from Oklahoma. Now, the Jazz and Nuggets are kind of those teams that are kind of in the middle of the country. Not in the middle of the country, but you know what I mean. They're kind of in no man's land where you don't really know where you can put them. But I went ahead and put them in this division. Now, you can certainly, take Utah and swap them with Phoenix or something like that. Because I've got another one, the Pacific, which if you've been keeping track of what teams I've been putting up on these different bubbles, you may have figured out what teams I would put in the Pacific bubble. But, sure, you can take teams like Utah or Denver and swap them out for Phoenix, to find out whichever teams are closer, as I mentioned, would be the better way to go, to have teams that are closer together play. But the venues for this one, you could definitely take the Toyota Center where the Rockets play. No scheduling conflicts there, I don't believe. The American Airlines Center, where the Mavericks play. The only conflict you would have there is that the Dallas Stars, the hockey team, play there. So something to work through there. You could definitely, and then you would have the AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play. And yes, that is a big stadium, but nobody's playing there right now. All the bowl games are done for college football. The Cowboys aren't playing any more football this year. So you could definitely take something like that and just have that there. You could definitely take another. I mean, Texas is a huge state, right? You could take NRG Stadium where the Texans play. You could add that in there if you really wanted to. The Texans aren't playing any more football this year. As I mentioned, no more bowl games this year. You could definitely go where the Spurs play, use their arena if you really wanted to, I suppose. And I'm trying to think of other football teams that play in domes in Texas. You got the Cowboys in Texas. I don't think there's any other ones. But just some ideas for the venues that what it would look like if they chose to go that way. And then, as I said, there was one more, the Pacific bubble. Again, this is just an idea. Nothing that's gonna happen. It's nothing definite. It's just something that I kind of had an idea for. And the Pacific bubble would look like the Trailblazers, Clippers, Lakers, Kings, Warriors, and the Suns. As I mentioned a couple minutes ago, if you really wanted to, and if it's closer, you could swap the Suns with the Jazz or Nuggets or something like that, just to put the teams in a group that are the closest together. And the venues, if this would ever happen, the venues that I could see happening, the Staples Center where the Lakers and Clippers play, the old Forum where the LA Kings used to play, the hockey team. The Forum is also what the Clippers owner purchased recently. You could use that. The Anaheim Convention Center you could definitely use, and you could also use the Honda Center where the Anaheim Ducks play from the NHL. So, and again, Anaheim and LA are pretty close together, so I think you could do that. You could use those venues for a Pacific bubble as well. Now, you could also use SoFi Stadium where the Rams and Chargers play, that new football stadium. I suppose you could use that if you wanted to. Another one, if let's say you didn't want to use LA and Anaheim, I suppose you could use Vegas as one where you've got MGM Grand Casino. You've got where the Vegas Golden Knights play hockey. You could use that arena. You could use where the Raiders play football. What's that stadium called? Allegiant Stadium. That's it. You could use that stadium. You could use. I'm sure there's plenty of other convention centers or ballrooms type deals that you could use there in Vegas. So, but yeah, the Pacific, they would have a lot of options you could use. And in that case, I think if there were to be a Pacific bubble and they would use Las Vegas venues, I think it would be smarter to exchange the Suns, put the Suns in the bubble with the Rockets and Thunder and all those teams, and then have the Jazz or Nuggets be in this Pacific bubble as well. I think that would make more sense, and that would be more logical. So, That is just the kind of an idea that I had for how the NBA could finish the season in a timely fashion and not go through a bunch of cancellations and postponements I feel like we're swirling the drain here with all these new cases and new protocols and restrictions that just came out today. I feel like this is the beginning of the end for the NBA if they don't choose to go in a different direction with how they are going about their season. And I think if there was anything that they would do, like I said, I think you either go to this local bubble format and have teams go to these bubbles, put the league on a 2-week hiatus or whatever you want to call it, get everybody healthy, no cases, make sure you got everybody in a bubble, just like they did to finish the season last year. But in these local areas, you got one in Texas, one in California, New York, Orlando, Florida, and in Chicago as well. It's kind of my idea. Or you could stay with the same kind of plan that the NBA has now, but you'd have to tweak it a little bit. You would have to either, as I said, if you want to stick with the plan you've got now, if you're the NBA, you can do that, but you're gonna have to tweak it a little bit. You can't completely stay with the same plan. You're gonna have to tweak it, whether that means having less games a week, not having games every day of the week, only having teams play other teams closer, so you can still have home games, but like you can still have the Celtics travel to Philadelphia and take on the Sixers, right? You would still have some travel, but maybe not have the Lakers come across the country and play the Wizards, right? Cut down on the distance that teams are traveling, right? So you could definitely kind of scrap what you've got and go to this kind of local bubble format, or you could stick with your plan now but just tweak it a little bit to cut down on that travel and even cut down on the amount of games a week, maybe, because with the way that things are going right now for the NBA, cases are going to continue to go up if you stick with what you got, and it's not going to end well. It is not going to end well for the NBA if they don't do anything about it. And sure, you can put as many protocols and restrictions on this as you want, but as we've already seen, the NBA already had some restrictions and protocols, right? But guys like Kyrie Irving, right? There was a video that came out of him at some birthday party with no mask on or whatever, right? You can continue to push the mask all you want, but if players are not going to wear it outside to wherever they're going, you can't completely make them abide by those rules unless you can threaten to suspend them or fine them or whatever. But at the end of the day, the decisions that these players are going to make, they're going to make them, right? They're multi-million-dollar athletes. You think they care about a $20,000 fine you're going to slap on them? So I think that, as I said, you can put down as many rules and protocols and social distancing things as you want, but take a look at the country as a whole, not just outside of a sports perspective. How long have we had these blue tape X's on the ground and the sticker spots on the floors at Walmart, right? To social distance and 6 feet. We've had that since March. We're almost a year on that whole put the mask on and keep away from people. Have you left your house? Because if you have, you're gonna figure out that people go outside and they completely forget about social distancing. People are breathing down your darn neck, and that is if that is any kind of idea as to what the NBA looks like for what the players are doing, no, there's no wonder that we're getting a lot of cases right now. It was only a matter of time until this happened, and it only took a few weeks. And you could say the same thing about college basketball, right? Oh, there's so many cases and so many games that are canceled, but there are over 200 teams in Division I college basketball. It doesn't matter how many restrictions and no fans and whatever, that's going to happen either way, right? The only way that college basketball would have no cases or whatever is if you went to a conference only schedule, and that just isn't going to be the same that's just not going to be the same, right? It's not going to be as exciting and it's not going to be as good. So they just chose to go with what they wanted to go for. The NBA, however, is I feel like they have a bigger kind of responsibility on their hands, right? They're the professionals, right? They kind of set the standard. And if this is the standard that you only make it a couple weeks without having things kind of explode in your face, you might as well just shut it down, right? Because as I said, you can put as many rules and restrictions on this as you want, but that only lasts for so long until things start to get out of hand again. You know, if things are going to get out of hand, they're going to get out of hand. You know, the floodgates can only hold for so long. So there you go. That's my takes on that, on the NBA. My thoughts on what the NBA really needs to do if they want to continue this season and even finish the season. And I think that, as I said, it's their responsibility to do something, because what they're doing right now just isn't working, and it's not going to work if they continue to do this and just slap restrictions on it and say, you can't do that. That's not going to work. So they got to come up with something else. If they don't, the NBA season is going to be an absolute fail, and it's going to be really sad to see. But other than that, I appreciate you watching this video. If you did tune in, hit the like button if you did enjoy. Leave a comment down below for your thoughts on what the NBA should do. Share it with your friends and family as well. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That'll be great. If the button is red, that means you haven't subscribed. And if it is red, go ahead and click it, tap it, whatever you got to do. Hit the subscribe button for more videos on Mike's Madness. And other than that, I will be back in the next video. I'll see you next time. I'm out.